Hello and welcome back, and today I want to continue talking about memory upgrades on NAS, and today we are looking at the RS1221 Plus, Synology's affordable but very powerful and functional 8-bay rack mount half-depth solution. It's got the Ryzen based processor inside, that V1500B. It's also got 4GB of DDR4 ECC memory inside, and the system features 4 LAN, it's got PC upgradability, it is a great NAS. But much like all of my other memory upgrade videos, a number of you are watching this for a very clear purpose. One, you've looked at the price of Synology memory and gone, ooh, that's a bit pricey, isn't it? Secondly, you've looked at how much memory there actually is to buy, and there's not much knocking around. So you're looking at unofficial alternatives. But do bear in mind that when utilising memory that is not Synology branded, that is that they're not their own modules, you do run the risk of resulting in your warranty not being supported. You're using an unsupported configuration that Synology have not validated that warranty for, and therefore if you're running that setup and something goes wrong, they may not be able to support you. So do make sure that you bear that in mind before going any further. But today we're going to be running 2 sets of memory on this. We're going to remove the 4GB DDR4 ECC module from inside, and the first module we're going to be utilising is 2 sticks, and that is the crucial 16GB module. I know you can't really make it out because of the light there. There's a link in the description to this memory, an article, and then later on in the video I am going to be showing you on screen the precise memory that I am utilising right the way up to the model ID. So again, later in the video, don't worry, you will see it. This is 2 DDR4 16GB modules at 2666 megahertz going inside, and we're going to see whether this system can identify both 16GB modules, therefore at the 32GB level, and we've got 2 VMs running on that we're going to see from my laptop on this NAS that we're going to run. We're going to lump on 12GB of memory on each and just double check that they all run fine. After that, and I think they will run fine, we're going to try something a bit beefier. We're going to go for 2 Kingston 32GB modules at DDR4 2666 megahertz non-ECC, which means this system we're going to see if it can support 64GB of memory inside. Now, a few things straight off the bat. First, I don't know, like with these memory videos, what order they'll go out in the end. Generally, I put them between other things. But when this goes live, there's a good chance this may go out in the wrong order to the order that I've been building these. I've already done the test at this time of recording utilising the DS720 Plus. And on that NAS, with both of these modules, they did both work, which is a very similar architecture to this system, slightly different though. So again, they worked there, hopefully they'll work again. The second thing to bear in mind, and something I touched on in that video, is that the CPU inside this device, from what I can see from official pages, does not support more than 32GB. That said, all the PDFs and datasheets I found of this CPU, which was released quite a while ago, although they don't state 32GB of memory any higher than that as their official maximum, just like Synology with this, it's also worth highlighting that the modules for single dual rank 32GB SODIMM modules have been released after this process, and there's every possibility that the reason a lot of those PDFs don't show it is they just didn't have that capability. Now, that's pretty unlikely. The chances are, because of UDIM memory, larger server arrays, and the fact that processor is designed for servers, the chances of it simply being a case of date releases and not showing on those data sheets is pretty slim. But there are lots of NAS brands out there utilising this CPU that actually show more than 32GB supported. The QNAP series, both in SODIMM and UDIM, utilising this processor, have listed a maximum utility of 64GB. So it's going to be interesting to see if this system can see that unofficial, unsupported 2 sticks of 32GB Kingston memory. But let's remove the lid. I've already installed DSM on this NAS, and I've set up the 2 VMs inside. Inside there we can see, let's pop that on its front so you can see it. Hopefully the light's not going to ruin it for you guys. Put my arm behind there. Let's remove the Synology memory first. That is their own official 4GB ECC DDR4 SODIMM module at 2400 megahertz. And we're going to pop in the crucial memory now. Let's make sure I get this in the right way. Let's pop that correctly in there. Again, I know this is super dull to watch, but I just want to make sure you guys can see that I am installing these modules. Put that the other way around. Be careful when installing memory. Don't do what I'm doing now and hold a rack mount NAS on its side. Make sure both memory modules click in, as we can see there. Just going to double check because I'm not overly satisfied with the way that's gone in there. Again, with a memory module, if you're not 100% satisfied with the way it's gone in, always take the extra time just to double check, because you'll be amazed how often, if those pins aren't 100% aligned, that you're not going to be able to get full operation of that memory. So they're all in there. Let's bring that closer to the camera. As you can see, the two modules are now inside. So what I'm going to do is move this NAS over to the other side of the room in my rack cabinet, and then we're going to boot this device up and see if DSM is going to recognize our memory modules and if the VMs are able to take advantage of the crucial 32 gig memory. Let's get this device booted up and hop our way onto the screen. Okay, so here I am on the DSM user interface of the RS1221 Plus that we've set up there. Now, you can certainly hear a lot of background noise here. Unfortunately, because I work in an open plan environment, the rack cabinet in question that this is in is producing all manner of noise. And even despite the fact I'm a good 5-6 meters away from it, it's very hard to remove it from the background here. So I apologize for you hearing me there. And I've tried to play around with the settings as best I can here on OBS, but unfortunately it is unavoidable. So you're going to have to bear with me on that one. But if we go to the control panel here, we can go into the information center, and boom, there is our 32 gig of memory ready and present. Also on top of that, we can make our way into the resource monitor, and from the resource monitor we can also see, by going into the CPU and going past that into the memory, that the 32 gig of memory is visible, and that 30 gig is free after the system utilizing and buffering it some in the background. Now, as mentioned, I have set up a couple of VMs. These are two Windows 10 VMs with a single core of that Ryzen processor and 2 gig of memory on board there. Now, both of them are identical. They're the same VM between the two of them. And what we're going to do, and I've already ran them so they run absolutely fine, is we're going to make our way into the VM and we're going to ramp up that memory. We're going to give it 12 gigabytes of memory. And again, we're not going to occupy all the memory inside here. The reason being is we want to make sure we've still got memory for the operation of the NAS, and therefore it won't act as a bottleneck and maybe skew our results. But two 12 gig memory VMs should be more than sufficient to show us that this is going to be operating. So let's click OK, and from there go into the second VM, click Action. From there, go ahead and update that to 12 gig of memory there. So again, we've got that all set up there. We've got our two VMs with 12 gig of memory each, and what we're going to go ahead and do is power them both on. Now, whilst they power on, what we're going to do is power that one on as well. Just give that first one a second to catch up. While they both prepare themselves and we open them up in a separate window shortly, I'm just going to talk a little bit about that processor. I've already covered it before. As mentioned, a lot of the data sheets I found do list it as a maximum 32 gig. There it is as well on chip.org as well at 32 gig. Even the official pages, although a fraction out of date, do still detail that this processor is still 32 gig in maximum memory architecture. The release date of it, again, it's not the newest processor there. As you can see, it was introduced back in late 2018, and this is being recorded in the first quarter of 2021, but still nonetheless, it should have been updated, and the official pages, one would have assumed if it was more, then they would have updated it. On top of that, the memory that we're utilizing today, we've got that crucial 32 gig across two that we're utilizing, so it's two 16 gig dual rank modules. The dual rank is very, very important. A number of NAS systems heavily reliant on dual rank modules, particularly when you exceed 8 gig. The reason being is you have to make sure that each of the cells on that board there, one by one, make sure each and every single one of them is not too big that the system can't deal with them. A lot of CPUs, more the enterprise ones, slightly less so, but certainly ones like this Ryzen or maybe some of the Celerons require, for example, in this case, each one of those cells to be 1 gig in architecture each, and dual rank means on either side of there'll be another one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and another 8 on the other side. If it was single rank, you generally find fewer chips, larger capacities, and that's where the CPU can struggle. The 32 gig modules that we're going to be using in our next test are available here. And again, there's not a lot of information on Amazon. There are other websites for them. There should be links in the description. But you can head over to Kingston's own website where it's all listed with the specifications. And down there, dual rank memory. Do bear in mind, of course, that the pages on all these manufacturers' sites do change, even if the links do not. So always, always, always check that the model ID is the same before making your purchase. Because that's something that, you know, any website, myself included, have difficulty staying on top of these changes at the eShop end. But let's head back into these VMs. There's VM1, and let's open up VM2. Get them in the right order. Let's log into our virtual machine here. So again, I can't remember if I changed this from the awful default password that this has, which is the word password with a 0 in it, with a capital P ending in an exclamation mark. It's a hell of a mess of a word, and it still manages to be remarkably unsafe and still awkward to type. That's the worst kind of password. Also bear in mind that although these are still relatively low level VMs that we're running, it's worth highlighting that we are still running an Enterprise Windows 10 VM. And these VMs, although these are still just try before you buy VMs, they're still the full size, and running a VM off a single 2.2 gigahertz core, even with all that memory, isn't great. And we're running it off of mechanical hard drives too, so not even an SSD. So the result is that this, if this was a standalone PC, this would be pretty lower. It's pretty much lower than the recommended specifications that Microsoft themselves would say for a PC of this architecture. So let's go into the task manager here and go into it there. And as we can see, CPU utilization, unsurprisingly, is going absolutely bananas with the system processes there. And of course, that percentage figure just talks about the overall. So if we go back into there, look into the utilization, we can see the amount that's being used. But moreover, we can see the memory there at the 12 gig being displayed within Windows 10 Enterprise Edition. And the second one, second VM, boom, there is our 12 gig of utilization. And finally, we can have a look at the resource monitor, which again shows, as soon as we started them off, that the 80% utilization over the total max 32 gig has been recognized. So we kind of knew the 32 gig would work. We know Synology have a certain position on unsupported, unofficial memory, whatever you want to call it. But the real interesting thing is going to be when we use these Kingston modules. Remember, we are still doing something that could render your NAS unsupported, so I'm doing this so you don't have to. But for now, let's shut down these VMs, shut down the NAS, and from there we can go ahead and install our bigger, beefier and more aggressive memory modules to see if the Synology NAS is going to see them. I'm going to shut the NAS down as soon as these VMs have shut themselves down as well. And I'm going to fast forward to the completion of this boot up. Once again, the noise of this NAS pretty insufferable at this distance, so I hope you guys can hear me throughout this video. But let's go ahead, shut this down, and fast forward to the installation of those 32 gig modules. Right, so we're back on the RS1221 Plus, and again we've got the noise in the background, and hopefully OBS will still carry me through. Let's go into the control panel, have a look in the information center, and boom, 64 gig of DDR4 memory is showing. Next, let's get that resource monitor up there. Let's have a look and see if it's showing us anything useful. Let's go there, and boom, there's our memory there being visibly available. As we can see, we're ramped up a little bit more. What we can see, the system is definitely going to be reserving it and buffering it there in the background. It should be mentioned that I was getting ready to set things up here with the Virtual Machine Manager. I'd already got that running in the background, and that's obviously taken its toll and taken a chunk there out of the background of the available memory. If we go into the Virtual Machine Manager here, we can have a look. It's just dumped a lot of it there. We'll go into the virtual machines, and I have already assigned 24 gig to each of these VMs. In fact, you know what? Let's ramp it up. Let's chuck a little bit more in there just to make sure we can, do a bit more, so let's go with 26 just to make sure it is going to register that increase on both of those. Let's go for it there, ramp that up to 26. So we're looking at, let's have a look, 26, so ultimately 52 gig of our 64 gig memory is now going to be occupied across both of those. So let's power them on one by one, just like we did before. It's preparing, just going to wait for that to say powered on, then boom, we're going to power on our second VM, nice and easily there. So we'll let those two power on there in the background. And while it does that, we've got here happening the VM testing, so that's going to connect to the first one. It's going to wait until that says powered on and running. And as soon as that says running, we'll go into our second VM and reactivate the VNC remote portal link there. And we're going in, it's initializing. And now our two VMs, once again, are going to boot up. We're going to give those a little minute or two. Move that to the side of the screen. You can see CPU and memory utilization there in real time happening there on the screen. And again, boom, both of the VMs are going to be displaying that with the utilization on the bottom right there. We have got our memory being utilized there, and again we're going up above that 80% there because we're utilizing a big old chunk of memory, you know, a huge proportion of our 64 gig of memory that's showing. And again, we are running two VMs on a single embedded Ryzen server core on mechanical hard drives. So once again, Windows 10 Enterprise is going to struggle. Let's get there and log into our VMs. Wait for that to connect as well. And of course, we're going to make our way in and check out that task manager just to see what exactly we're going to see. One is going to assume that we're going to see that 26 gig of memory, which is a real odd number, let's be honest. Having a VM running on, or any computer running on a non-pairable number like that, that's a weird one. But I still think it should run absolutely fine and display that memory just like it did in our DS720 Plus memory testing that we recorded before. We're going to let that boot up. That single core is certainly going to be working hard. Much like last time, I reckon when we can get into the main desktop here from the PC, almost certainly going to see it struggling quite substantially with CPU utilization, almost certainly smashing it at 100%. But for now, let's open up the task manager on each of these. Again, I know I could just Control-Alt-Delete, but it's one of those things, unless you're going to be utilizing the side buttons there, Control-Alt-Delete isn't quite as straightforward when you're portaling in to a VM over via VNC. Leave that task manager opening. Let's go back into the first VM there. Unsurprisingly, CPU utilization absolutely killing it at 100% on that single core. But as you see there, it can identify that 26 gig of memory. And if we go to the second one there, we'll do the same thing again. Hopefully, Task Manager is going to open shortly, even though the CPU utilization presumably is absolutely rammed. As it goes in there, we will be running a follow-up video, particularly on this NAS, talking about memory utilization, all 26 gigs showing there. Because although in other systems I will show off the memory, it's what the test we're running right now, although it shows the VM is displaying that memory, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's definitely still available. The CPU doesn't guarantee that it will be able to take advantage of all 64 gig. It may be kind of phantom memory. So on this device more than any other, I am going to be doing a follow-up testing, another video, where I'm going to be using Passmark on these systems at the same time and really slamming the utilization of that memory. It's very hard to run these tests without bottlenecking the CPU on a VM, on a quad core like this one. So you that's a lot of the time why maximum memories and certain CPUs end up being just like it's a capability more than anything. But for now, I'm going to wrap things up here. This has shown to me that it at least can identify the memory, the unofficial memory that's inside, but we're going to hold off full judgment until that full testing of the utilization of the memory on this Ryzen processor very, very soon. But if you want to learn more, there are links in the description to nascompares.com and the memory we've utilized today and the links that we've shown. Alongside that, if you want to learn more, click subscribe to find out more about these videos, and click like if you've enjoyed the video so I know you guys take advantage and like to hear about this sort of thing in the world of NAS. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.